All right. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Your attitude is noted and ignored. Thank you very much. We're back. He needed it 4 minutes ago and it was 8:46. Now we're very late. We are about 15 lines, 12 lines from the bottom of Daled and Beis. We're in the middle of the sugya that we've been discussing about Halach, where in a case scenario where a person says, Halach, yes, I have your item, here it is. Do we view that as something where he has to make a shvua, which is the shita of Reb Chia? Or no, there's no chiyuv for shvua, which is the shita of Rav Shesha. So the Gemara says, Masiv Mar Zutra Bered Rav Nachman, again, 12 to 15 lines from the bottom of Daled and Beis. He says from a brisa, Ta'anu Kalim Vikarkos. There was a claim about both portable, movable utensils and karka. Hoda bekalim v'kofar bekarkos. If he admitted about the kalim and was kofir, denied about owning any of the karkos, or the reverse, hoda bekarkos v'kofar bekalim. In both of those cases, there's a patur, because there is in both cases a discussion about karka, and by karka there's never a shvua. However, hoda mixas karkos, well, now that was only talking about full items. But what about mixas karkos? Mixas karkos, you're going to be pater, but mixas kalim, there you're going to be chayiv. Now, Taima, the reason why we said you're pater in the case of the kalim karkos was the karka la bashvuah. That was because karka is la bashvuah, that we don't make a shvuah when it comes to karka. However, ha-kalim, the kalim, dumya the kalim karkos chayiv. However, if we were to have two aspects of kalim, so let's say I had, 4 bicycles, and I say 2 of them are mine. So there, because the kalim are a subset of other kalim, therefore it's similar to kalim v'karkos and chayiv. You would be chayiv in a shvua. That was why the brisa said that mixas kalim is going to be chayiv. So says the Gemara, heichi dami. And the Gemara says, what's going on in this case? The Gemara says, Lavda Amar lehelach v'shmami nohelach chayiv. We might see from this case of Toanu Kalim v'karkos that had this been a case of Halech, a case where the defendant said, no, here, just take it, it's yours. So there we might see that you're chayiv. That's reflective of the shita of Reb Chia, and therefore a kasha on the shita of Rav Sheshes that we saw yesterday. So says the Gemara, I disagree with your diuk, says the Gemara. You want it to be medayik, that by mixas kalim you'd be pater. That's not correct. When it says kalim v'karkos, it wasn't meant to leave a diuk that kalim are pater, but a kamash malan that hoda b'mixas kalim chayiv af al karkos. That if you are modeh on mixas kalim, you're still chayiv, even though what was discussed in the case was both kalim and karkos, which is a shtickle chiddush. Says the Gemara, it's not such a big chiddush. Ma kamash malan. We know that there are cases when we discuss both kalim and karkos where there is a chiyuv of a shvua, even though kark is involved. My kamash malan, are you talking about the case of zokakin? We saw this earlier in Shas. On the top here, it says that it's later on, but we also saw it in Maseches Kedushin a while back in Seder Noshim. Zokakin, what is this case? Tanina. Zokakin hanechasim she'en lahem machrayis, es hanechashim she'esh lahem machrayis tishav aleim. We have a case of items that are ein lahem machrayis, namely it's metaltalin. And we do see already in Shas precedent that when we have a partial claim on the metaltalin, that even though the other part of the claim is karka, we still make a shvua. So we see that this idea that we tried to be medayik from the brisa that Rav Nachman brought, that modeh b'mixas kalim you're chayav af al karkos, that's zokakin. We already saw that in Kedushin. So what are you repeating it here for? So says the Gemara, hacha ikar. Our case of Rav Nachman is the ikar case. That's the primary place to learn it from, which is the diuk that we just made, which is that it's not a case of Halach that's chayiv, but really kalim v'kalim is also going to be pater. And when we said kalim v'karkos, it was to teach us that if you're modeh b'mixas kalim, you're going to be chayiv even though karka is still involved. And hasam, in regards to the brisa and kedushin, the case of zokakin, that was agav gerora nispa. That was, yes, it was true about the case, but it wasn't the primary reason why the case was brought, and therefore not a raya. Says the Gemara as we turn to the top of Hamad Aleph, Ulamanda Amar Helach Pater, according to the sheet of Rav Sheshes, that when I, the defendant, say, Helach, here's your item, it's yours, that you're Pater, Amai Itzrich Kra Lemeute Karka Mishvua. Why would I need a pasuk to say that you're putter in such a case. After all, hakol karka helachu. Every single case of karka is a case of halach. So what is going on with the fact that we didn't even learn about this pasuk yet, but we'll learn about it soon. So Amar lach itzrach kra hecha dechafar babor shichin umaros. If you do something unique to the ground, where you ruin the ground, you're digging holes in it, you're removing ground, perhaps it no longer has the same classical din of karka, kamash malan, that's not true, that you would still be in the same exact case of being pater. Inami, another case is hecha detanu kelim bekarkos v'hoda bekelim b'kafar bekarkos, similar to like we saw on the bottom of Dalet Amud Beis, that in such a case, that's also another reason why we would need a pasuk about karka, because I might have misunderstood. Very good. So we're right now on Hamad Aleph, about 5 lines down, 6 lines down. The Gemara says, Tashma, the Tani Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama brought a brisa. We saw this brisa already. Arba shomrim tzrichin kfira b'mixas v'odah b'mixas. There are 4 shomrim that when they make a shvuah, it's only under certain circumstances. That's when they are partially kofar on a claim made against them, and v'odah b'mixas, when they admit to part of the claim that was made against them. Who are the 4? Shomer chinam v'ashol nosei sachar v'asocher. We know our 4 shomrim. Hechidami, what's the case? Lav de amar le helach. Wouldn't it be the case that when he makes this shvuah, it is halach, and he was chayav a shvuah, which was our whole pretext of this case. And because you're chayav a shvuah, that's a kasha on Rav Sheshes, who holds that there's no shvuah by halach. Says the Gemara, no, that's not correct. Amar le gimel paros masar tilach. What was the actual case where a person says, I gave you 3 animals, umesu kulhu bipshia, and you, the plaintiff, said that I, the shomer, had animals, all 3 of which died under my watch, bipshia. Amar le'ihu, the shomer retorts back to the plaintiff. The defendant says, no. Chada, first of all, lo hayu dvar me'olam. I never had 3. One of these animals never was. Namely, I didn't even borrow 3. I borrowed 2. V'chada mesa ba'ones. One of them died. Mesa machmas malacha. Whatever the death was, it was not a death where the shomer would have been held accountable. V'chada mesa b'pshia debein shlomelach. So there, one of them died b'pshia, and that I halachically owe you money. That's not a case of halach. That's a case of nezikin. That's not halach. Is where I say, yes, it's yours, I'll pay you back. This is not that. This is Bezdin says, Phil, you killed that animal. You're chayav to pay for it. So therefore, delav halachu, the case is not a good raya, not a good argument against Rav Sheshes. And the third of the way down on Hamad Aleph, the Gemara brings another brisa. Tashma detani avua de Rabbi Apturiki the l'derabchia kamaisa. What we're going to see over here is a rejection of Reb Chia. You may recall that on the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph, the sugya that we're currently learning about halach all started with a brisa that was brought by Reb Chia. The brisa that was brought by Reb Chia was 12 lines or so from the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph. And there he said a case where I said to you, mana li biyadcha, you have a mana of mine, and you respond to me, ein lecha biyadi klum. You deny everything, and then the Eidim say, no, you actually owe me 50. That was the case of Rav Chia from Gimel Amud Aleph. And this person, Avuha, the father of Rabbi Apturiki, disagreed with this with the Rav Chia that we had on Gimel Amud Aleph. How so? The Gemara says, Manali biyarcha. Let's say I claim you owe me $100. Ve'hala amar al encha biyadi klum. You deny everything, full kfira. And Eidim come along and say that you, Stan, actually do owe me 50. Those were Eidim who are Mechayvim, very similar to the case of Reb Chia. So the Gemara says, Yochol Yishava ala sha'ar. Maybe you would say you need to make a shua on the extra 50. Let's get the case clear. I claimed you owed me 100. You were kofar. You said, I owe you 0. Stan says, Phil, I owe you 0. Eidim say, Stan, you're a liar. You owe Phil 50. What about the other 50? The balance. So there, Yachal Yishov al Ashar Talmud that you don't make a shvua, because the pasuk says, Al kol aveda asher yemer ki huzeh, alodas pivata mechayvo viata mechayvo al pihadas edim. That if the person were to be modeh b'mixas atayna, then we would say yishava. That way, that's the fundamental idea. Modeh b'mixas atayna yishava. But over here, because it was done through Eidim, the diuk from the pasuk is that Eidim would not be mechayiv you in the sha'ar. That's against Reb Chia from Gimel Amud Aleph. So Reb Chia from Gimel Amud Aleph is now seemingly rejected by the shita of the avuha of Rav Apturiki. Says the Gemara, Masnisa karami salei de Reb Chia. What are you doing? You're asking a brisa against Rav Chia. Rav Chia, Tanahu, Upali. You can't do that. Rav Chia was the same age as Rav. They were in the Dor HaMa'avar, the generation of Amoraim that straddled the fence of Tanaim and Amoraim. And because they were the immediate Talmidim of Rebbe and others, they were therefore able to have a stance like a Tana. It's probably very politically charged if you think to the politics, I'm still a Tana. What makes you a Tana? They probably, I don't know what the equivalent would be in our era. But nevertheless, it was what was going on over there. So says the Gemara, how could you ask on Rav Chia? Avua, the father of Rabbi Abturiki, you're not asking the right type of question because you're asking against the wrong person. You brought a brisa. Big deal. Rav Chia disagrees. Says the Gemara, no, we're asking a different question. After all, Amar. I'm asking, how does Rav Chia from Daf Gimel, who says you need a shvua on the shiur, explain the brisa of the Avu of Rav Avturiki, who quotes a pasuk that says you don't? So here we're going to get into the nitty-gritties of the pasuk to see how Rav Chia, who is a Tana, and this person, Avua of Rav Avturiki, how they analyze the pasuk. Says the Gemara that Rav Chia would say, "Hahu the pasuk of Al Kol Aved Asher Yamer Ki Uzeh." That's the Mod Mixas Hatayna. That pasuk's only talking about Mod Mixas Hatayna, where we know the din is Yishava, which is the din of Rav Chia and Daf Gimel. The Avu the Rav Avturiki, what would he say? Amar Lacha Ksiv. The pasuk has two parts: Hu and Uksiv Zeh. Ksiv Hu and Ksiv Zeh. Chad Mod Mixas Hatayna. I agree that in general that's true. But V'chad Lahadas Edim de Pater. The second is that Rav Chia, you have to be wrong because the extra word in this pasuk is that when the Eidim are the one that say Stan actually owes Phil money, then the shiur in that case is pater from a shvua. Oh, that's a big kasha because I understand he's a Tana, but he still has to answer up for the psukim. He's not bigger than the psukim. So how does Rav Chia answer that? V'idach, what would Rav Chia say? We're 2/3 of the way down on Hayamad Aleph. Says the Gemara Chad Amod Mixas Hatayna. One is Taka talking about Moda Mixas Hatayna where we know Yishava, and B'chad LaModa Mimin Hatayna. It's a fascinating thing that when you make a Moda Mixas Hatayna, it has to be about the same min. You can't say we were talking about barley and now I'm talking about wheat. It has to be barley and barley. So therefore, that was a limit, a tight limit that Rav Chia says the pasuk is talking about, the Moda Mimin Hatayna, that when you make your claim, it has to be about what the plaintiff was talking about. You can't just start talking out of left field about a different product. Says the Gemara V'idach, what would the father of Rav Avturiki say about this? The Gemara gives a fascinating answer. Moda Mimin Hatayna, that in regards to the case of Moda Mimin Hatayna of barley and barley as opposed to barley and wheat, less late. He doesn't hold of that limiting factor. And really, you can have claims that are of different types of items. What is the raya for this shita that the father of Rabbi Avturiki could say that we allow for the claim of Moda b'mixas hatayna to be from different minim, from different types of food? The Gemara says, "V'savla k'Rabban Gamliel detnan ta'anochitim v'hodelo b'seorim pater." That if the claim was in wheat and I admit in barley, so the Tanakama holds pater. What does Rabban Gamliel hold? Chayev. What does that show you? The Moda b'mixas hatayna still applies, even if the plaintiff is talking about wheat and the defendant is talking about barley. That's okay. However, therefore, Rav Chia doesn't agree with him in the pasuk. It's really fascinating because the pasuk is not talking about this bichlal. So it's like a lot of layers away from the pasuk. The pasuk reads Al Kol Aved Asher Yamer Ki Uzeh, and they argue in regards to a case of Moda b'miktzas b'osamin. That's what they're actually arguing about, and that's why they learn the psukim different. Let's tell a story that starts to apply these psukim. We're at the 2 dots, or at least I have 2 dots, about 12 lines from the bottom of the page on Hamid Aleph. The Gemara says, Ahu Raya, there was a shepherd. Every day they would typically give animals to him to watch, and they would do so under witnesses. Safe bet. They wanted to make sure that when let's say I'm giving over animals to you, you're my shepherd, I always do it under witnesses. This is my livestock. This is my livelihood. I don't want to be in a scenario where there's any denials. I gave you 4 sheep today. The Eidim say Phil gave Michael 4 sheep. Shalom al Yisrael. They write it down on the ledger. Yom Echad, one day, you and I have been working together a long time, so I trust you and I decide to deviate. Yom Echad Masr le below Sadeh. Today it's a Tuesday. It's Throwback Tuesday. I like you. I'm just going to give you the 4 sheep today, but without witnesses. Lisof. At the end of the day, The Gemara says actually the word lesof is not here. The Gra says it's lesof asusade. Adam came along and said, Amar lahu lo hayu dvar meolam. And this guy, Michael says, nah, Phil didn't give me any sheep on Tuesday. He's a liar, but there were no witnesses that day. So what's the din? Says the Gemara, well, before we get to the din, asusade and asidu beida achal tarte minayhu. Wow, okay. Here, the Edom come along and say, that's adorable that you think that that Phil didn't give you 4 animals. I literally watched you eat 2 of those new animals. So there's witnesses that you ate the animals that you said you never got. You're pashat a liar. So Amar Rav Zera, im isa le Rav Chia kamaisa. If you hold like Rav Chia, like we saw in Daf Gimel, mishtaba ashe'ara, then you should make a shvua on the other 2. Yes, that's Edim that say 50, right? Edim that say 50. On the she'ar, you need to make a shvua according to Rav Chia. The Avua, the Rav Abturiki would say you don't have to make a shvua on that. But according to Rav Chia, kamaisa and Daf Gimel Amarav, you would have to say that. You have to, it's built into the case. You have to just, it's a given. Yeah. Let's say, for example, on Mondays, let's say every other day I gave white animals, and these animals I gave their brown animals. So now the brown animals, I see the skins of the brown animals. I watched you make a shahakol on the spit. You ate them. You're guilty. There's not, the edus is ironclad. How they knew, we could come up with a case, but it doesn't matter. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. Amar le'abayim isa mishtaba. You're going to say he's going to make a shvua? Gazlanhu. I said to you, here are 4 animals, and I did so without Edim. The next day, I said to you, hey, where are my 4 animals? You said I didn't take anything. While the barbecue sauce from the animals dripping down your face, you ganav. So then what happens? So then halacha l'maisa, if you hold like Rav Chia, the first 2, the Edim nailed him, and the other 2, he has to make a shvua. Says the Gemara, shvua? The guy's a Gazlan. What are you talking about? How Gazlanim have no ne'amonos to make a shvua. So what are we even talking about? Amarle, you're 100% right. If I catch you with the barbecue sauce on the face, having eaten my 2 animals, you're not the one making the shvua. Who's making the shvua? I am. Shekenegdo ka'amina. Normally, the defendant says, I'm innocent, here's my shvua. Here, I know you're guilty and you're a Gazlan, you have no right to make a shvua. So the Chachamim say, the Gemara says that in a case like that, where the Eidim nailed the guy, they nailed the defendant, he no longer has the right to make a shvua. Halacha allows me to chime in and say, I make a shvua that I did give him those other animals. Now he owes me 4 animals and not 2. It's a spin, because the guy has no ne'emanos. Once we catch him. This is true by Rav Chia and Daf Gimel, and it's true here in the case of the 4 animals. Correct.
No matter what.
Correct.
But they'll get all 4 back if the owner takes the shvua.
However, according to the other shita of the father of Rabbi Abturiki, because there's no shvua on the extra 2, you wouldn't get those animals back. Yeah, that would be the nafkamina between them, which is a big nafkamina. And it's also, it really changes the case of Reb Chia, where like, oh, Adam said you owed 50. No, you're a liar. You're a thief. You're not an honest person. So there we see a machlokes, Tanoim Amoraim. It's a little odd because Reb Chia is a Tana, and this guy Rav Abturiki is an Amora, but it seems to be it is a brisa, but I'm just saying the presentation of the Gemara is a little unique. It's usually not like that. Okay, says the Gemara, but hashtanami de lesele de Reb Chia, and if you want to say that we don't hold like Reb Chia, namely we hold like Rav Havua de Rav Avturiki, that there's no shvua on the she'ar, nechayve mid Rav Nachman, we should still be mechayev this person a shvua, but a shvua that's a little different, a shvua Rav Nachman. What's this? Titnan manli biyadcha. If I say to you, you owe me 100, and you say in the biyadi, the halacha is pater. However, even though you're pater midoraisa, Rav Nachman mashbino so shvuas hesis. This is our first introduction to this idea, as far as I know, in Shas. Anybody else? Did we learn about shvua? Maybe we did. I shouldn't be so categorical, especially considering I don't know what we taught yesterday. But the idea doesn't like bounce off my head. It's a bit of a new phrase. What's a shvuas hesis? Let's take a look at Rashi. 3 lines from the bottom. Rashi dibur maschel hesis shvua sheisisu chachamim. The shvua that we push upon someone based on the chachamim, it's a din derabanan, that lekach lehasiso lehodos. We're trying to convince him or to entice him, is really the technical translation, to say the truth. So normally, you're right. So when a person says Ein lecha biyadi, he's pater. But here we want to throw in the din of Rav Nachman. The time of Mefarish b'Shvuos, Rashi says Chazaka Ein Adam Toein Ela Im Kain Yesh Lo Biyado. A person shouldn't make a claim. I'm not going to go to Bezdin about you if your mom is innocent. Like that's just not a thing. Like that's not. People don't do that. I'm going to hire a lawyer and go to Bezdin. Again, it's an Americanized version of the case. I'm going to schlep. I'm going to do all the paperwork. I almost had to take someone to Bezdin when I was living in Eretz Yisrael. It was very close. My Rebbe guided me not to. I listened and I lost about $4,500. I still have all the paperwork and I'm still upset about it. But I'm mochel as it relates to this person's neshama. What'd you say? Yeah, no, this was 15 years ago. I didn't forget. 15, it was even more. I should stop talking because I'm recorded. Okay. So the Gemara says that we do the Shvuas Heses. You're right, Midoraisa, you're not chayiv. That's true. But we should do a Shvuas Heses because at the end of the day, we still want to not get you in trouble for the theft. We want you to do tshuva. So we add a Shvuas Heses. Granted, it's Midorabanan. But let's remember one twist here. Who's making the Shvuah? It's not the Gazlan. It's the owner. It's the plaintiff. So therefore, the Gemara says the Rav Nachman was takantahi. The Shvuas Heses that Rav Nachman was talking about was a takana. But turning to the top of Daf Hamid Beis, and we're going to go to the top of Daf Vav Amid Aleph today, about 12 lines down, 10 lines down. Says the Gemara, v'takanta l'takanta lo avdina. A double derabanan we're not going to do. What's the double derabanan? Din number one is that because the defendant is a thief, he can't make a shvua. So we flip the shvua to the plaintiff. That's din number one. Din number two, a shvuas heses, like it's not even shaykh by him. What's the shvuas heses for the plaintiff? It's not. He's not the one who did anything wrong. So the whole setup is funky, and therefore we don't have the din in this case of a shvuas heses. Says the Gemara. The Tepukle, top of Hamid Beis. Maybe we should look at this differently. To Havale Roa, he's a shepherd. Amar Yehuda Stam Roa Puzzle. Wow. Says the Gemara. Maybe we should say that every Roa Stam is puzzle. What does that mean? It means that he grazes the animals he's watching in fields that he should not be grazing in. Maybe. Says the Gemara, Lo kasha ha didei ha de alma. You're what? That so right. And the distinction becomes even sharper with the Gemara's response here that you're making. I didn't think about that at all. But the Gemara says, Lo kasha, you can't say that every roa is puzzle. When do we say that a roa is puzzle? Hadidei. That's when the animals are yours. Because if they graze in your field, that saves me money. But had de alma, when I'm just a roa, I'm an employee and I'm not watching my animals. I'm also not paying for the feed for my animals. I'll graze wherever you tell me that they should graze. I have no yetzer hara when they're not my animals. I don't care where they come from. I'm not paying for it. It doesn't matter. However, when they're my animals, and this was a bigger chiddush to your point about the Bein Roe Lot and Roe Avram and Roe Lot, is that it really was theirs. So even though there is a yetzer hara, they were strong enough to not do that. Dilote mahachi. If you don't make this distinction between animals that I own and therefore I have a yetzer hara, and that's where we say stam roa is a ganav, versus animals that are de'alma, then anon chiyusa leroa hechi masrinan. Then how can we ever have a profession of giving over animals to a roa? After all, v'hachsiv, the pasuk says in Chumash, lifnei iver lo sitein mechshol. If in fact it's true that if I give my animals to you, you don't own the animals. If I give my animals to you, and that's considered to be moser to a roa and he's a ganav, then you're never allowed to hire a ganav because that's misayel dvaraver. That's leaf neighbor lo sitein michshol, and that's aser. L'chora, even if the person's a goy. We know we have precedents for this in the Gemara and Avodah Zarah. That being moshit yayin, not yayin lanachri, no moshit ever minachai lanachri. That's a din. That's an iser doraisa. Yeah, right. It's probably not true. I mean, Gzela is also there. Yeah. So l'chor is the same example. Anyways, so it can't be, the distinction the Gemara made has to be true, that there's a difference between a roa who owns his own stuff, where we do assume that he's us, that's usher, but then you're not giving, then it's his own animals, that's fine. But if I'm giving you my animals to watch, we can't assume that that person's a ganav, because if we did, then that would mamish be lifnei iver every time you'd hire someone. It can't be. And Ela Chazaka, you're right, says the Gemara, Ein Adam Chote Velolo. People don't sin unless there's personal benefit. We typically know this to be true. Yeah, you don't, I'm not gonna do an Aveira with your stuff like that. I have enough of my own problems. I don't need to add Aveiras with your stuff. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, let's say, for example, I'm your investment banker. I'm not gonna do something illegal with your money. Why would I do that? Maybe I do it with me because I'm the victor. I win more money. I'm not, otherwise, then let's take the argument fully. Then I can never do any investing, because then I have to assume that the investment banker is a thief. It can't be. Ein adam chote v'lo lo. We have a halachic assumption that a person will only do things that are to their own benefit. All right, end of that lengthy and complicated sugya of halach and a lot of iterations therein. Worth doing a lot of chazara on this and learning a lot of rishonim on this. I don't know when we're going to do that. It's not going to be anytime soon. On Friday, I'm going to throw you out of my shiur. I'm going to throw you out. That's what's going to happen. I love you more. Says the Gemara at the 2.7 lines down. We said Zei Shava she'ein lo ba pachos mechetzia. We had this very odd formulation in our Mishnah on Daf Beis that I make a promise she'ein lo ba pachos mechetzia, that I don't have less than half. So the Gemara asks, what in the world is going on with this really odd language? Al de isle mishtaba, al de lesle mishtaba. He's making a shvuah on what he has, or he's making a shvuah on what he doesn't have. What is this weird? I make a shvuah that I don't own less than 50. What is the weird language? It says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, the Amar really shvuah sheyesh li ba. I do own the whole thing, and ve'ein li ba pachos mechetzia, and I don't have less than half. Says the Gemara, v'neima shvuah shekula sheli. Why don't you just say what you think, that I really own the whole thing? Says the Gemara, you cannot say that, because umi yahavinan lekula. We already know the conclusion. You're definitely not going to get half. And in a case like this, where everybody's claims are equal, the frame doesn't allow for you to say kula shali, because it's pashut not the way we're going to conclude, which is a little bit odd. Why can't you claim it? It's what you think. You're not saying what the conclusions. I'm asking my own question now. You're not saying what the conclusions are going to be. You're going to say, I really think I got the first base first. I'm going to put my cash on. This is it's mine. So the fact that the claims are equal doesn't make one person more right than the other. But so anyways, that's my own side question. I don't know the answer. But the Gemara says that therefore, he can't claim kula shali. Okay. V'neima shechetzia shali. The Gemara says, why doesn't he claim chetzia shali? Says the Gemara, he can't say chetzia shali either. Why? Because mora leile dibure. He's making his first comment bad. Look back in the Mishnah. Ze omer kula shali, ze omer nimitza siyev, ze omer kula shali. He said that already. Now when it's shvuah time, that was his taina. The taina was, I own everything. If the taina is that you own everything, and the shvuah is that you own half, you look like a liar. So therefore, we can't have you say chetzia. So says the Gemara, therefore we say, ein li ba pachos mechetzia. Ask the Gemara, hashtanami, even with the language of ein li ba pachos mechetzia, that's also mara leile dibure. It's not much better. What? Yeah, your taina compared to your shvuah is you're still off by, let's call it 49%. Whatever the discrepancy is significant. There's no reason why that should be much better. And then the Gemara starts to fill in the gaps. Says the Gemara a quarter of the way down, to Amar, really, what is the claim of our Mishnah on Daf Beis Amud Aleph? Really, to Amar kula shali. This is what you say. Look, guys, I really own the whole thing. Uladivrechem, according to the way you're structuring this conversation, shvuah sheyesh li ba ve'ein li ba pachos mechetzia. You want me to make a shvuah, and I can't say all? I'll say whatever I can get away with. I don't own less than half. Can't say half, because half is a specific amount. I don't own less than half is a non-specific amount, and therefore it's not mara leile dibure. That's how the Gemara concludes as to why we say that. Asks the Gemara, asks the Gemara a very practical balabatisha question. If I walk in and, I'm walking and I'm holding half of the duffel bag with money, and you walk in holding half the duffel bag with money, why do we need a shvuah? Just split everything 50-50. What's the point of the shvuah? How are we helping? The conclusion is going to be the same. If we walk in and the taina is that each of us say we own half, Bezdin's going to say, great, split it. Why are we chayiv to make a shvuah in this case? But even when we make the shvuah, the conclusion is the same. Oh, you're saying the shvuah will? Well, yeah, that's the answer of the Gemara. So Amar Rav Yochanan, shvuah zu takanas chachamim, shlo yekol echad bechad holech v'tokef v'taliso shel chaver romer shalihu. Yes, that's the answer. Very good. But the havamin of the Gemara is that because everyone's tainas are the same, why bother making a shvuah? So the Gemara says like Stan, the reason why we make a shvuah is because some people have yiras shamayim, not all of us. But some people have yiras shamayim. And when you have to make a shvuah, you're going to say, look, I do not want to be up against the halachic burden of making a shvuah that actually isn't true. And you know what? I lied. I got there a second after you did. I grabbed it a second after you did. It really wasn't pachad shachya. And therefore, I'm backing off. You're right. That's the answer. Says the Gemara, oh, well, hold on one second. If we're choshesh about you that you might be a thief, to the point that you have to make a shvuah, says the Gemara, a third of the way down, the name of migu de chashid amamona, chashid nami ashvuasa. Big shas sugya. Ooh, we don't have time for this, but we're going to pretend like we do and learn Daf Yomi. And the Gemara says over here that if we need a shvuah out of concern that you're a thief, then you're going to lie. Then you might be a liar about the shvuah too. So let's just broaden this. Do we say that if we're choshesh about you being a thief, choshesh, not for sure, if we're only choshesh about you being a thief, we know that if you are a gazan, you cannot make a shvuah, pashut. But if we have a chashash about mammon, that you'll take money when you shouldn't, do we also have a chashash about your shvuah? Do we say that one who's chashid amamona is also chashid ashvuasa? Says the Gemara, lo amrinan. We do not say migu de chashid amamona chashid ashvuasa. Dilote mahachi. If we were to say that we're chashid amamona chashid ashvuasa, hi damar achmana mode mixas satayna yishava. Then when the Torah says that if you're mode mixas satayna, you have to make a shvuah, well, there too, there's a possibility that you're lying, because what did we say earlier in the Gemara? We said earlier in the Gemara that the reason why you said half was because you were not flush with cash. You actually lied. You didn't lie to steal. You lied for practical purposes, which is that you didn't have enough money. Nema, perhaps in that case, we should also say, migu de chashid amamona chashid ashvuasa, says the Gemara. You can't really ask from that case. The reason why I, as the defendant, said I only owe you half was because Hasam ishtemute kamishtamit le Rabba. It was like Rabba said a couple of blot ago, that the reason why I lied, I really should have said I owe you everything, but I'm just cash poor, so I lied and I thought to myself, I'll pay you when I'm ready. And Teda, the Gemara says, I'll bring you a raya that we are not concerned about chashid amamona, that we are not concerned that a person who's chashid amamona is chashid ashvuasa. To Amar of Idi bar Avin, Amar of Chizda, hakofer b'malveh. If a person is kofer on a loan and we find out he ended up lying, he's still kasher le'edus. We'll analyze this in a minute. The second part of the line we'll analyze later too. B'pikadon pasal le'edus. If I do, however, deny an item that I'm watching, that's not malveh. That's you gave me an item to watch and I denied it. That's a big problem. That we don't trust you on. So says the Gemara, fine. Elahad Tani Rami Barchama, we saw the brisa earlier today, Arba Shomer Tzrichin Kfir B'mixas V'oda B'mixas, that a Shomer will make a shvuah only if he's kofer on part of the claim and if he admits to part of the claim. The four were Shomer Chinim B'ashol Nose Sachar B'asocher. Nema, perhaps over there, because he was only Modeh B'mixas, there we should also say Migu de Chashid Amamona Chashid Ashvuasa. Says the Gemara, even by the Shomrim, still Hasam Nami Ishtamute Kamishtamid. Maybe the Shomrim are only saying they're only Modeh B'mixas Atayna because they don't have the cash on hand. Savar. What were they thinking, the Shomrim, when they said that they were kofer on half and modeh on half? What they thought was mishkach nale be'agam u'maisin ale. I'll go find the animal later. Sorry, I skipped a line. Mishkach nale ganav. I'll find the ganav who actually sold it. V'tfis nale, and I'll be able to recollect. Inami mishkach nale be'agam u'maisin ale. one way or the other, the person feels like they're going to be able to collect the money. So that's why he said this half claim of Moda b'miksa. Says the Gemara, if that's true, well, if that's true, then in the case of Pikadon, which you said is pasal edus, why would he be pasal edus? Nema, he could say the same thing. Maybe the Baal Pikadon can say, Ishtamute kamishtamid. Maybe the reason why the Baal Pikadon denied having the Pikadon in his house is because he was cash poor. He didn't have the item with him right now, but he is responsible for it. And Savar ad b'chashna, I'm going to do some looking around and perhaps I'll find it, but I did lose it. Why don't we say that? So says the Gemara, you're right in principle that would be true. But ki amrina nakover b'pikadon pasal edus, we have a very specific case. Why a case of pikadon is pasal edus? And that is kigon da'asu sa'adeh v'asidu bey. There were witnesses who saw you with the pikadon. De'ahi shaita ise lepikadon b'beise v'havayada. When you said I don't have the baseball bat that I asked you to hold, I can see it behind you, leaning up against the corner, and I know that you know. I'm looking at it. You're mamish a liar. I think I shared this with you, this line that they said about our friends Hamas. The Israeli said, I know you're lying, and you know that I know you're lying. It's ridiculous, That's this. That's why by Baal Pikadon, it's an ukimta shtickle. We're saying that there's a particular case here. And the particular case is that I believe that you think that you're wrong. You know you're wrong. I see you're wrong because the bat that I asked you to watch is sitting behind you. So therefore, in the case of Pikadon, we won't trust you anymore. You are chashira ashvua. Says the Gemara, inami, or to have a nakit lebiyade, the guy's holding it in his hand. One way or the other, he's guilty. So says the Gemara, Elahada Amar Rav Huna mashpiano, so that when we're dealing with a case of a shomer, we also will make a shomer make a shvua she'enu birshuso. So when we ask a shomer to watch something and then he no longer has it, we have a special shvua for a shomer that he has to make, that the shvua is that the item is no longer in his rishus. If we are so concerned about a shomer that we have to make him make a shvua she'enu birshuso, Nema, we should say, then perhaps we should say that once we're so concerned with a shomer that we're making you say a shvua she'ena birshuso, then guess what? We should be chashid ashvuasa also. Says the Gemara, Hasam Nami, More, he rationalizes, V'amar dmeika yahavna le. Maybe I'll just pay him for it. I'll force the payment. So says the Gemara, that's lo sachmod. Lo sachmod is when I want your item so badly that I just pay for it. You asked for your item. I'm a shomer. And I'm like, I'll just pay him for it. I'll just shove the cash across. Shh, just take my money, right? That's lo sachmod. That's a din in chumash. So says the Gemara, Amar le Ravachami difti le Ravina, v'akaber alav de lo sachmod. You can't force payment. If you force payment on an item that someone else owns, they don't want to sell it. They want their item back. They don't want your money. It could be an antique. It could be an heirloom. They want their money back. They want their item back, not your money. That's lo sachmod. So says the Gemara, that's a big fat problem because then you're chashir amamona. Says the Gemara, lo sachmod leinshi below dmei mashmalahu. This is so interesting. Says the Gemara, most people think that lo sachmod has nothing to do with money. It's not true. The threshold in halacha of the isser of lo sachmod is dafka with money. You don't violate the isser of lo sachmod unless you pay. But the average balabas, the average balabas assumes that lo sachmod is a feeling only, even without cash. And therefore, the mindset when he does the lo sachmod is not that I'm doing lo sachmod, therefore he's not chashir amamona, because he's such an amoritz, because we're all amoritz. Says the Gemara on the top of Bava Mid Aleph, a little bit more to go. By virtue of the fact that Rav Nachman would obligate people to make the Shvuas Heses. The Shvuas Heses we learned about already. That is, we saw on the bottom of Hamid Aleph, where Rashi said that was based on the Chazaka that Eid Adam Toin Elim Kain Yesh Lo Biyado. Obviously, there's a reason for the claim, and if the plaintiff is claiming against the defendant, there must be a good reason, and therefore, maybe we should say, Nema Migudu Chashida Mamona Chashidas Ashwasa. That's question number one. We're going to stack a few questions in a row. And furthermore, Hadetani Reb Chia, we saw a couple of blot ago. Shneim nishbain v'not limni balabais. What was this case? This was a case where my name is Phil. I hired you, Stan, to be my employee, and I was cash poor. I asked Michael to give Stan his salary, and I would pay back Michael later. And then everybody denies ever having received money. So therefore, in that case, but they both can double collect from me, and I lose out. Says the Gemara, nema there too, because there's a shvua. We should also say, nema migu dechashira mamona chashira shvuasa. And Vesu, furthermore, we have another question. Hada Amar of Sheshes, shalosh shvuos mashbian oso, that there's a case where we would give a person 3 shvuos. Number 1, shvua shelo pashati, but you should make a shvua that you didn't touch it. Number 2, shvua shelo shalachti bayad. Number 2 is that you didn't extend your hand on it. Number 3, shvua she'ena birshusi. This triple shvua certainly indicates that you're not such an honest person. So therefore, a very strong play that perhaps we should be concerned about migu dechashira mamona chashira shvuasa. Rather, it must be that we don't say this. Otherwise, because if we did, all of these cases, the shvuas wouldn't even apply. You can't make a shvua in those cases, because if you make a shvua in a case scenario where you're chashid, your shvua is a 0. Elamai, it must be that all of these cases where we thought that perhaps that maybe we could say chashid, that your chashid amamon is chashid ashvuasa, elamai, it must be that we don't hold of this. Says the Gemara, we'll stop right here at Abaye, about 10 lines down on Bava Aleph. Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night. And because the Amud Beis is a little bit shorter, we'll try and push forward a little bit. Wishing you all a beautiful night.